Hi everyone and welcome back to episode 4 of Her Side of the Ruck. My name is Bernice.
I'm Tash.
We are not pundits.
We're just two women who know what a ruck is.
So on this week's episode we will be discussing all of the semi-final action. So we'll start off with the Leinster versus Glasgow match and then continue with the Bulls versus Sharks derby. So starting off, semi-finals. Okay, so
What a week.
Tash.
What a weekend of rugby. I think for both of us, it's probably disappointing because both of our teams didn't get through. My predictions, I got the Bulls to win. That I did predict
You
that
did.
right. But yeah, my Glasgow prediction was way off. But you've got to back your team, haven't you? You've always got to back your team. But Leinster came to play. They were clinical, resilient, being 25-5 up after the first 40 minutes. That is very hard for any team to try and claw back. And credit to Glasgow, they did in the final 10 minutes. It just is a testament to their resilience and that they don't want to give up. The impacts from the bench, Jamie Dobie was great when he came on, scored a try. Standout performances, I guess Sione Tuipulotu is always, I feel like I say his name every single week for Glasgow, but since he's come back from injury, he has just been awesome. So can't wait to see him in a Lions shirt. But yeah, Glasgow weren't at their full strength because of the injury list that they've had, which is different to last season, where a lot of players were injured in around the February to April period and then came back for the knockouts. The only two kind of long-term injuries were JP Dupree and Sione Vailanu, and then they came back to play this season. But this time around, you've got both the Fagerson brothers that are injured, and Xander Fagerson's had to pull out of the British and Irish Lions tour because of a calf injury, which is such a shame for him because he's so up for those kinds of things. And obviously, it's amazing to go on tour with the Lions. So it's a shame that that's happened to him. Jack Dempsey's been injured for a long time now. Hugh Jones has been injured. Seb Cancellieri's been injured. So a long injury list for Franco Smith. I do think the boys at Glasgow put out as good a performance as they could have done. But I have seen a lot of comments about a lot of the Scottish lads having a mental block when it comes to playing at the Aviva. I mean, Leinster are like the Irish team. They are so, and they consistently beat the Scotland men's team at the Aviva when it's in the men's Six Nations. So I don't know if it's that, but Leinster turned up. There were still a couple of gaps in Leinster's game, particularly in that final 10 minutes. Like, I don't want to say they let Glasgow in because Glasgow worked those tries and they were really good tries, but I thought their defence was a lot more lax in those final 10 minutes because they felt like they won the game. If they want to win the URC, you can't do that against the Bulls because the way that they played against the Sharks this week, they were just everywhere and line breaks, tries, all that kind of stuff. So, but yeah, Leinster were great. James O was great. I did predict him to score a try, but he gave a gorgeous offload to Jamie Osborne for his second try. That kind of like one hand round the
Yes.
back. Oh, it's so beautiful. So James Gibson Park was also great, and Leinster beat Glasgow up front in the scrum, and they had the lighter pack as well by quite a significant amount. So they were just great, and I'm looking forward to seeing the scrummaging game against the Bulls this weekend. What were your thoughts on the match?
Yeah, I think we obviously at the Leinster versus Glasgow match now, but I think both of the semi-finals were quite disappointing in a way. I didn't expect the margins that
So
that
big,
ended
like,
up being,
yeah.
yeah, the scores. And I just felt like both of the matches were pretty like one-sided. So like the Leinster match, very one-sided. The Sharks match also like the Bulls were like it was a very one-sided match.
Mm.
But I think for the majority of the match, Leinster dominated, and
Yeah.
kudos to Glasgow for holding on and coming back. It was just that thing of like, oh, it's too little, too late. And I actually
Very much
felt
so.
so disappointed because watching the Glasgow versus Stormers match, I was like, okay, Glasgow are in this now. They're playing as if they are defending champs.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, they are going to be the team to watch then throughout the semis and the finals. And I didn't see the same energy that they had against the Stormers. Like they
No.
were just running the Stormers ragged in that match. And I remember in the Investec Champions Cup, it was the Glasgow versus Leicester Tigers match. And I was just like, that is insane. Like they were
Yeah.
just running ragged. And that's like the Glasgow team that we know and the
Yeah.
Glasgow team that won the URC. But they felt a little flat to me. I don't know where, the energy was. It wasn't like the previous week against the Stormers where they were just on top of their game. I thought Glasgow were brilliant in that match. And I just
Mm,
didn't see the same energy from them. And I just didn't expect that big of a margin against Leinster. Like I really, like I've said it on our socials. I thought Glasgow was going to win by
mm.
5 points. Yeah, I also think that Glasgow didn't get that many chances in the first half to make
No,
something from
no.
it. So in the second half, like in the latter half of the second half, they did get more chances with the ball, which
Yeah,
also made a big difference. And the injury list, I feel like it's so easy to overlook it or just say like play with what you have. But the players that are missing in the Glasgow team at the moment, they are key players and players
they
that
are.
actually make an impact. So I think well done to Leinster. I think they got the job done,
Mm.
which they needed to do. I still felt like the Aviva wasn't like as packed as I thought
No,
it would be,
it wasn't
which
bouncing, was it?
no, it wasn't. And just like the whole atmosphere, I don't know, maybe people that were at the match can comment on it and tell us a little bit more about how the vibe
Mhm.
was like. But yeah, I think maybe it's just the type of match as well that it ended up being at the time.
I suppose from a cost end, all the knockout rounds don't come as part of your season ticket, or well, they don't at most
Mm,
clubs anyway. I'm not sure if they do at Leinster. If that is the case, please let us know down below in the comment section. But normally that's not the case. So then if you're forking out more money to pay to go to knockouts, you might be thinking, I'm going to hold on and hope that my team is just going to get through and get to the final, and then I'll go to the final. But I
mm,
have seen quite a few comments on TikTok specifically where people are saying, cannot wait to see a silent Croke Park. And I hope that's not the case because the atmosphere last year at Loftus when the Bulls hosted
mm,
Glasgow was amazing. It popped off and you just thought this could easily go in the Bulls' favour because there's 55,000 people here all wearing light blue
mm.
jerseys that all want the South African team to win. As I think you obviously Vox Pop one guy who'd already booked his flight to Dublin, so that aged well, that real aged well. My transition video on TikTok did not age well, and neither did our predictions. However, that's just the nature of trying to guess who's going
Mm.
to go through. But yeah, I'm not really sure about the atmosphere. Maybe it's tense. Maybe it's tense for a lot of Leinster fans because they know that their team can do it. And
Mm.
I mean, we'll go on to our predictions later on in the show, but my heart is telling me Leinster are going to win, but my head is telling me the Bulls are going to snatch it just with how their performance has been so far in the knockout stages compared to Leinster's. I feel like the Bulls have just played with a bit more energy compared to Leinster, even though they did kind of pick apart Glasgow. And that was the other thing. Glasgow would infringe or spill the ball forward, and then Leinster just zipped it down the other end.
Mm.
And that is how dangerous they are. And I've seen them do it to so many teams in all competitions that they play in. And it's scary how good they are at doing that. If they can do that, which the Bulls can also do, I foresee a very dramatic and interesting URC Grand Final.
Yeah, and I also think that, those two tries from Glasgow in the last few minutes of the match, like if you want to win the trophy,
No.
you just can't give that gap to a team. And it's obviously going to be much tighter as well. And it's going to be physical. I don't see it going the same way as with the Glasgow match. I just think both teams are going to have to be at their best. But I think Leinster specifically, since we are focusing on them now, I just think that they will need to kind of facet out those little errors because you'll need to be on top of your game if you want to win the whole thing.
Well, Leinster are in the grand final. It's hosted on Irish soil, so will they take it? But moving on to the other semi-final, Bernice, you were at Loftus wearing a black jersey supporting the Hollywoodbets Sharks. Obviously, a disappointing result on a personal end, but can you just give us a bit of an insight to what it was like on the day and what the performance was like?
Yeah, so I think I'm still a little bit disappointed and a little bit gutted. And I think it mainly comes from the Sharks' performance on the day. As I've mentioned, this wasn't really the type of semi-final that I was expecting. I was expecting a little bit more blockbuster like, just as in the quarterfinals against Munster. I was expecting that type of match. Not
Mm,
saying extra time and penalty shootout, but just like a little bit like closer margins and a little bit more fight from both Glasgow and the Sharks. Firstly, I just want to congratulate the Bulls on their win. I think they are very well deserved winners. And on the day, the game plan that they had was just executed amazingly. And I genuinely feel that the two most consistent teams are in the URC final.
I agree.
But I do, well, yeah, no, definitely. And I do want to shift my focus a little bit to the Sharks though, because I have a few thoughts and I just felt like being at the match, I just had this like sense, watching the match felt like a repeat of the last four matches that the Sharks played. It felt very one-dimensional, no variation. We had a lot of chances in the latter half of the first match on the Bulls' try line in the 22, and we just couldn't score. We just couldn't convert anything into points, and it felt one-dimensional. It was pick and drive, and we didn't adapt to it. I just felt like
Mm.
we didn't try something differently, even though it wasn't working. And again, I felt like a lot of the senior players didn't step up. Whereas in the Munster match, I felt like, okay, some of them in the latter half of the match, like they actually stepped up and they showed like why they are in the team and why they are senior players. But then this match, it felt kind of like back to square one. I thought there were some good moments in the match. We did score two very good tries when the ball did go
Mm.
to the wingers. Like each of them scored a try. So Mapimpi
Yeah.
scored one try, Ethan Hooker scored one try. But I think we did lose the game in the first half, in that last period of the first half when we just couldn't score any points.
For me, watching, I suppose, as a neutral, I thought Ethan Hooker had a great game. You mentioned him last week, and he was player of the match coming out of the quarterfinal against Munster. He was great, and as you said, I think he's really deserving for a Springboks call up. And as an England fan, I would like to see him in a Springboks jersey. I think I'd like to see what he could do on the international stage. I thought Oxney's was good as well. I thought he carried hard. There was a little bit of agility and step. And actually, the Sharks were really unlucky because Bulls got so many yellow cards. It was like yellow card central. Like if you watch the highlights, half the highlights is the referee giving yellow cards to Bulls players. Like they were down to 13 men twice. And if they
Yeah.
do that against Leinster, they are not going to win the trophy and they will lose a chance to win a trophy for a second year on the bounce. So they need to be really careful with their infringements and their penalties because when
Mm-hmm.
Glasgow infringed against Leinster, Leinster tore them apart. So the Bulls need to be very cautious of that. But Bulls were a lot more opportunist. When they had the ball, when they had the line break, they would just keep going and there were support players. And as you said, Sharks were a little bit one dimensional. Those tries did come from small moments of magic, but they were brief glimpses. Whether is that an issue with the Sharks' attack strategy, or is that a testament to the Bulls' defense? Don't know. If you have an opinion, let us know in the comment section. And I'm also going to speak as a neutral here from saying this. When Jaden Hendrickson kick was doing a box kick, slipped, it came back onto the Bulls' possession, and the Bulls ultimately went on to score a try. I'm sure a lot of Irish and particularly Munster fans will say that it is karma that happened and set Bulls up for a good premise in the first half and gave them a good foundation. So is it karma? Maybe. Did he just slip? Yeah, I don't know. Was it like dewy? It looked quite foggy at the game, so I don't
Mm-hmm.
know like what the conditions had was if the ball was grippy, all that kind of stuff. So, but yeah, I'm just voicing the opinion that I know some people on the internet will be having. But yeah, Bulls, as you say, Bulls with a more consistent team, they are deserving to be in the final.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like I said, I just think that the two most consistent teams are in the final. Like they are both very well deserved. They've performed, the Bulls and Leinster have performed throughout the URC season, not
Mm.
only in the first part of the season or the last part, like they performed throughout and they made every match count. what you said about Jaden Hendricks is definitely doing the rounds on socials. I've seen it as well.
Yeah.
People saying it's karma. Yeah, I think we have spoken about it a little, but I still don't see a massive issue with what Jaden did in the Munster match. I know he did chip Jack Crawley, and there's a lot of things that happen, but I also think that South Africans will have one viewpoint and then Northern Hemisphere will
Oh,
have another because
absolutely.
it's just, you know how rugby is. But one thing I also just wanted to add is I don't think that the 110 minutes against Munster actually had an impact because the Sharks didn't look tired. I just think that the game plan just didn't
Wasn't right.
work. And
Mm,
we've been following the same game plan for 4, 5 weeks, and we've scraped through and we got the win in the tight matches and the very close margins, and we ended up on top. But I think this time around, it just we found a team that exploited it and they ended up on top. So I think we also did miss the presence of Evan Etzebeth, his leadership. I wouldn't say that he would have necessarily made such a big impact that the Sharks would have gone on to win. I think it's much bigger than that, and I think the Sharks would need to sit down after this and be like, okay, where did it go wrong for us? Because it's not just the semi-final that didn't quite go our way. Like if you look at the last few matches, like there was a pattern, and then yeah, the Bulls just exploited it.
if you don't win on strategy when it comes to knockout rounds, well, you don't go
Yeah,
through to the next stage. And
exactly.
Leinster and Bulls were the better strategists. I suppose as we said at the top of this episode, disappointing on both of our ends because the teams that we support in the URC are not going into the final. However, objectively, the two most
Mm.
consistent teams, Leinster came first in the league, Bulls came second in the league. They are
Yeah.
playing, one and two are playing each other in the final, and it could go any way. So let's move on to talking about the final. I've got a few stats here, actually, that I think it would be useful to discuss. So
Mm.
Leinster have scored the most points in the regular season. So this is excluding all the knockouts. This is from rounds 1 to 18. They've scored 612 points. Bulls are the second top try scorers behind Leinster. So Leinster have
Mm.
89 tries in the regular league season and Bulls have 80. However, now it comes down to defence. Leinster overall were fourth in the URC for defence stats and top for turnovers with 143. Bulls were 13th overall for their defence stats. That is a huge difference given how close they were in the table. And then in terms of leading point scorers, you have David Creel, who was joint sixth for leading point scorer for the Bulls, and Ross Byrne, eighth for leading point scorer for Leinster. But Bulls have won more scrum penalties than any other team this season. So what I think is going to happen, big up front, Bulls will want to
Mm.
scrum. They will want to scrum and scrum and scrum. Leinster will want to keep Bulls out of that 22 because when Bulls are in the 22, inevitably they'll force a penalty or they'll score. But Bulls will equally want to keep Leinster as far away from that 50-metre middle line as possible because if you give Leinster a bit of space, and even
Mm.
if they're like close to the try line, you've got people like Dan Sheehan who just
Mm.
masterful, like masterful front rowers. So, oh, it's going to be a juicy one, that's for sure.
It is. And I think this one for me was so difficult to predict because I kept going back and forth, like, okay, there's so much pressure, I think, on both teams to actually take this win. I think, Tash, you touched on it last week and you said that it seemed like Leinster are kind of holding back a little bit because of
Mm,
the British and Irish Lions tour coming up, and it seems like they don't want to get injured, whereas other teams and players that are also selected for the British and Irish Lions tour still throwing their bodies on the line, putting their bodies on the line. But I think you can't be careful if you want to play against the Bulls.
no.
You're gonna have to be ready for the physical battle. You can't shy away from anything in that match. So if that is their mindset, I think they're gonna have to change that very quickly. And I think they're gonna need to be like, okay, this is this is our year. Like, how badly do we
Oh,
want
yeah.
it?
It,
And I
it,
think same with the Bulls, like they would also need to sit and be like, okay, this is our is this going to be our third time lucky? Like, is this going to be it?
Yeah.
And I think they'd equally wanted. Also, I think the Bulls have a pretty good record at the Aviva. So I actually don't know who's going in as the favorites this time.
I don't know either because both Irish and South African fans are very vocal and very passionate about their teams, aren't they? Like, I'm incredibly passionate about the teams that I support, but I don't think, like, I'm not even sure how much that compares to Irish and South African teams. It's just like another level. So there'll be a lot of vocal voices leading up to this match who will have very strong opinions, who is the underdog, who's going to be the predicted winner. Like, I suppose you look at the Gallagher Prem, the English League, you've got a clear, consistent team, Bath Rugby, who are in the final, and then the underdogs, my team that I support, Leicester Tigers, who have managed to get to the final as well. And in their two semi-finals, there was a clear difference in how narrow the scorelines were, I suppose. In this, both semi-finals had big margins for Leinster and the Bulls. When they have the ball and attacking and have the space, they have the caliber of players to just do anything with it. And I feel like they have dynamic modes of attack. The Bulls will be haunted from last year. That is a fresh memory in their mind. Leinster have played a final against Toulouse, but that was in Europe. They haven't made a URC final that I'm aware of. They've always fallen short before that stage. So the Bulls have a very recent pain and hurt that they might be carrying into this final, or they might just go, we forget last year. It's all down today. It's all down to now. As I don't know if Leinster have held back the emotion either for they don't want to get injured for the Lions, or they've held back the emotion because they've got too emotional before the final and it doesn't go their way. I think Leinster are going to come out with a bang this weekend. I think it's expected that the Bulls are going to come out with a bang anyway. They will be up for it. But I do think Leinster are going to come out with a big bosh. We're here. We're going to go for the trophy this year. And I don't know who I want to win because Leinster always smash Leicester Tigers in Europe. So then I'm kind of like, I don't really want you to win. I kind of want the Bulls to win. And they also smashed Glasgow in Europe and beat them in the run-up. So they've kind of beaten both of my teams that I support in recent years in England and in the URC. So I'm kind of like, rooting for the Bulls on this one. But my head and my heart say different things. So for me, I'm going to predict the Bulls to win by 3.
Okay, that is. I felt like we needed a drum roll for that one because this match is gonna be really like I 100% agree with you. I'm also having this like back and forth battle. I think it will just be do or die for both of them. I think
Yeah.
it is going to be a very tight match. Hopefully it lives up to like the blockbuster expectation, but I think if it's going to go the way that we've been talking and saying like, okay, these are the important parts or these are the things that the teams need to focus on or that we think they are going to come out doing, then I think it's going to make for such a great match. So I've also predicted the Bulls to win by by 5. It's still tied. I don't see it getting any bigger than that, the margin. But yeah, I just think this final is so tight to call.
And as well in the URC, the away teams always do really well in the final, don't they? So it seems to
Yeah.
be a trend because the URC is obviously
Mhm.
not in the grand finals, not played on neutral ground like it is in other domestic
Yeah.
leagues. It's always played in favour of the team that came higher up in the league. So it's at Croke Park. It's on Irish soil. I don't know. I feel like Leinster could do it, but there is just something about the Bulls this year which I think they'll think, nah, we're going to do it and we're going to do it well.
Yeah.
But as a neutral, I'm looking forward, hopefully, to a really tight game. I hope that's not the case with the Gallagher Prem. I hope Leicester come out with a big bosh. So we don't, so I'm not like on the edge of my seat and my heart's about to come out of my chest like it did at the weekend. Oh my goodness. Anyway, but yeah, I hope it's a tight match because as a neutral, when you're watching those games, they're just brilliant. They're absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, because I'm also just thinking like on the other end of the spectrum, I'm like, how would Leinster lose this match? You know, I'm like, how are they gonna lose this match again? Like I can't see that happening. But yeah, I just think like whoever loses this match are gonna have to like sit down and be like, okay, like what did we need to do differently or where did it go wrong? So I think there's just a lot at stake for both of these teams.
There's a lot riding on this final. We will find out who will be the winner of the URC this weekend. It's 5 p.m. kickoff in the UK, 6 p.m. kickoff in South Africa time, Bernice?
Yeah, it is. That's correct.
We'll be checking it out. We'll be posting updates on our socials, but we both have the balls to win. Will they pull it off at Croke Park? We will find out.